Mr. Peterson grabbed her arm and knocked it down, and the gun fired 2 more times. In essence, Mr. Peterson never shot anybody.
New evidence has just surfaced in the Megan Thee Stallion case, and it's changing the entire narrative about what happened that night. Tory Lanez was already sentenced to 10 years for the shooting. Now, word on the street is he may be getting released. We've got all the details here. Let's break it down. The new evidence and the bodyguard. When the judge hit Tory Lanez with that 10-year sentence in August 2023 for shooting Megan Thee Stallion in the feet back in July 2020, mad people thought that was a wrap. He caught 3 felony convictions, including assault with a semi-automatic firearm. The gavel dropped. They hauled him off. That was supposed to be the final chapter. But his legal team wasn't about to just sit on their hands. His lawyer, Jose Baez, stayed in the trenches filing appeals. And as time dragged on, months turning into years, stuff started bubbling to the surface. Stuff that was never brought up at the original trial. The wildest part is how the biggest development came out of Megan Thee Stallion's own civil defamation lawsuit against blogger Milagro Grams. Meg filed that joint in Los Angeles Superior Court in March 2025, going at Grams for posting things that questioned the shooting and accused Meg of capping for clout. But during the discovery process in that civil case, something nobody expected went down. Over 200 pages of medical records from Cedars-Sinai Medical Center surfaced, records going all the way back to July 2020 that were never fully handed over to Tory's defense before the criminal trial. These records broke down the surgical removal of 4.380 caliber fragments from Megan's feet on July 13, 2020. X-ray images were in there showing entry wounds, but there were also notes about what Tory's team called inconsistencies. The emergency room doctors gave different descriptions of the wound trajectories in the initial assessment. Tory's lawyers jumped on that, saying those inconsistencies backed up the idea that somebody else in the whip pulled the trigger. On December 15, 2025, Tory's attorneys took it to the California Supreme Court with a petition calling the whole thing a Brady violation. Brady versus Maryland is that landmark 1963 case that says the prosecution got to hand over any evidence that could help the defense. Tory's people argued these medical records were held back before the December 2022 trial, even though prosecutors could have gotten them through Megan's medical providers the whole time. The LA County DA's office clapped back quick. On January 10, 2026, they dropped a counterbrief saying the full records weren't exculpatory and that LAPD forensics had already tested the bullet fragments back in 2020. Everything matched the pistol they recovered. And before all that, the Second District Court of Appeal had already shut down the request for a new evidentiary hearing in November 2025, saying the medical records were cumulative. Basically, they wouldn't have changed the jury's mind one bit. Right now, the California Supreme Court got the petition on their desk. No oral arguments scheduled. Tory's still sitting in California men's colony. But then medical records weren't the only thing that came to light. A cat named Bradley James stepped up, and what he had to say threw gasoline on a fire that had been burning since the trial jumped off.
Not long ago, Unite the People was approached by a gentleman named Bradley James.
James said he'd been running security and driving for Kelsey Harris during Tory's trial. He was in her orbit. He was hearing conversations.
Mr. James informed us he was not under a non-disclosure agreement or a confidentiality agreement.
Homie said his conscience wouldn't let him chill while a man rotted behind bars for something he didn't do.
Mr. James informed Unite the People that he was witness to the conversation Miss Harris had where she stated,
and what he claimed Kelsey said, that flipped the whole narrative, at least for everybody who had been side-eyeing this case from jump.
She had the gun. She fired it 3 times. Mr. Peterson grabbed her arm and knocked it down, and the gun fired 2 more times.
According to Bradley James, Tory never bust that gun. He never touched it. He never squeezed. James said Kelsey copped to having the strap and letting it off, and that Tory only grabbed her arm to knock it down, which caused it to pop 2 more times.
This statement aligns with the statement of the only non-party witness to the case, Mr. Sean Kelly.
The video pointed out how James's account lined right up with Sean Kelly's trial testimony. Kelly was the bystander witness who said he saw 2 women scrapping, 2 men trying to break it up, and shots coming from the passenger side. That's where Kelsey was posted.
For example, there were 3 potential suspects in the car that night, and yet the only DNA sample was taken of Mr. Peterson.
They also raised something folks been screaming about for years. Why was Tory the only one they swabbed for DNA when 3 other people were in that truck and unknown DNA showed up on the burner? Now, real talk. Bradley James's statement is just that, a statement. It hasn't been introduced as evidence in anybody's courtroom. Tory's legal team tried to get an affidavit from Kelsey Harris to back claims like this, but nothing came through. And the appellate court already weighed in on the witness credibility drama, calling it trial strategy strategy and not coercion. But for the streets, especially for people who've been locked in on this case since 2020, James's words hit different. It brought that one question back to the front that a whole lot of people have been asking since day one. What if Kelsey Harris was the one who let that thing go? Kelsey Harris, the witness who went ghost. If you want to understand why Bradley James's statement had people going crazy, you gotta understand the role Kelsey Harris played in this whole saga and how her story switched up over time in ways that had both sides looking at her sideways. Kelsey Harris was Megan Thee Stallion's day one homegirl and makeup artist. She was in the back seat of that black Escalade on the night of July 12, 2020, posted up directly behind Tory in the front passenger seat. She was one of only 4 souls in that whip when the shots rang out. That made her one of the most critical witnesses in this entire case. In August 2020, about a month after the shooting went down, Harris pulled up to the LA County Prosecutor's office for a 45-minute recorded sit-down. And in that interview, she wasn't playing no games. She pointed the finger straight at Tory. She laid out the whole argument, how it started as playful chatter about music and then escalated into accusations about who was creeping with who. She said Tory grabbed the pole from his lap and squeezed toward Megan's feet 3 or 4 times. She said he did it because he was jealous over some love triangle situation between the 3 of them. Harris also brought up how Tory offered Meg $1 million in hush bread after the shooting. Money Megan didn't touch. That 2020 statement was crystal clear. It put everything on Tory, and it matched what Megan had been telling everybody. But then, the trial came around in December 2022, and Shorty did a whole 180. When Kelsey Harris hit the witness stand on day 3, she was a different person entirely. She was shook, fidgeting with a tissue, couldn't even make eye contact with nobody. And when the questions came, she clammed up. She pleaded the Fifth Amendment against self-incrimination 52 times in 90 minutes flat. When they asked who the shooter was, she said she couldn't recall. When they asked her about stuff that had zero to do with incriminating herself, like who was at Kylie Jenner's party, she still wouldn't budge. Her lawyer had told her to plead the Fifth because she could potentially catch perjury or accessory charges. Harris had already admitted to having the gun in her possession earlier that night. She handed it to Tory during the ride. That one detail alone put her in legal crosshairs. The prosecution tried to hit her with perjury in a sealed motion, but the judge did that and only let her speak on surface level stuff, like how much liquor the crew was putting down that night. The switch up from 2020 to 2022 was night and day. In 2020, she said Tory did it. In 2022, she wouldn't say a damn thing.
If you look at the steps that it took, remember Kelsey asked for immunity. That should have said something.
That right there was the red flag a whole lot of folks caught. Why would Kelsey Harris be asking for immunity if she ain't got nothing she needs protection from?
Why she asked for that?
Not only did she ask for immunity, then got on the stand and said, I don't remember anything.
She copped that immunity deal, then hopped on the stand and played dumb. That sequence of events had people's antennae all the way up. Then 2025 brought another twist. On July 8th, 2025, Harris dropped a sworn declaration into Megan's civil harassment suit against Lanez. In it, she went back to pointing at Tory, but kept it vague this time. She said fear of retaliation held her back from keeping it 100 at trial, but that the facts were still what they were. The 5-page filing detailed how she and Megan fell out after the incident, her PTSD therapy sessions, and threats she said were coming from Tory's people. As of February 2026, Harris been keeping a low profile out in Atlanta, doing freelance styling work and ducking the cameras. She hasn't touched any more legal proceedings, but the way her story shifted, from straight-up accusation in 2020 to radio silence in 2022 to a watered-down reaffirmation in 2025, has been dissected in appellate briefs and internet debates non-stop. The November 2025 appellate ruling waved it all off as trial strategy, not witness tampering. The conviction held up because Megan's own testimony didn't waver. But for Tory's supporters, Kelsey's whole vibe throughout this case was the single biggest indicator that something about this situation was mad fishy. And there was one more body who had been in that ride that night, the wheelman, Jaquan Smith. His take on what went down was different from everybody else's, not because he tried to pin it on somebody or hold somebody down, but because he refused to do either. Smith was a 25-year-old aspiring videographer from Inglewood who got hired for a quick $200 to drive the crew around that night. In his initial police interview at 5 a.m., he ran through the argument, the tension, the drinking. He said Meg stumbled out the whip barefoot. He said he heard Tory wilding out. He heard pops he thought were firecrackers. Then he saw Meg limping back, holding her feet. But he also said he never looked back. He never clocked the gun. He never saw who did what. He said he was shook and didn't want to get mixed up in no celebrity mess. His October 2022 deposition was the same story, beat for beat. He added that Tory offered him 100 racks to stay quiet. Bread he turned down. Smith's consistency gave him credibility that nobody could question. The appellate court saluted his account as unimpeached circumstantial support for the verdict, but his neutrality also meant he couldn't confirm or deny the million-dollar question: who actually pulled that trigger? The stabbing and the fight to survive. While the legal battle crept through courtrooms at a snail's pace, something popped off inside prison that threw the Tory Lanez case right back into everybody's timeline in the most violent way possible. On May 12, 2025, Tory Lanez got stabbed up at the California Correctional Institution in Tehachapi. The attack came from fellow inmate Jermaine J. Rock Williams, a 38-year-old doing life for a body. Williams allegedly came at Tory with a makeshift shank carved from a melted toothbrush and put 14 holes in him: torso, arms, legs. The whole thing went down in under 30 seconds in the yard, with 6 other inmates watching it happen. The news blew up the internet immediately. Tory's Instagram account posted a statement saying he caught 14 stab wounds, 7 to his back, 4 to his torso, 2 to the back of his dome, and 1 to the left side of his face. The post said both lungs collapsed and they had to throw him on a breathing machine.
Tory was stabbed 14 times, including 7 wounds to his back, 4 to his torso, 2 to the back of his head,
The details were straight up horrifying.
and 1 to the left side of his face. Both of his lungs collapsed, and he was placed on a breathing apparatus.
But not everybody was buying the numbers wholesale. Medical folks hopped online, and some of them called cap on whether somebody could have both lungs give out and then bounce back off a breathing machine that quick.
Well, they're not questioning it.
They said it's bull.
I said, "Boo."
That can't happen.
Some people speculated that the severity might have been gassed up, possibly to get better prison conditions or build sympathy for the legal battle.
There might be an opportunity there to have some good things happen for you if it sounds more dramatic than it was.
What is a confirmed fact is that Tory got airlifted to Kern Medical Center in Bakersfield, where he spent 4 hours on the operating table getting lacerated muscles and a partially collapsed lung repaired. They had to pump 200 units of blood plasma into him. He was laid up for 9 days before getting discharged. The wounds were real. The recovery was a long road. Physical therapy stretched well into the fall because his mobility was still messed up. The CDCR incident report, which they dropped in redacted form on June 3rd, 2025, classified it as an inmate-on-inmate assault. But here's the part that had people heated. The report showed that Tory had been thrown into general population, even though a 2023 pre-transfer risk assessment had flagged his celebrity status and called out elevated vulnerability because of all the media scrutiny around the case. The system knew he had a target on his back. They put him in Gen Pop anyway. After the stabbing, the California Department of Corrections moved Tory 150 miles north to California Men's Colony in San Luis Obispo on May 22, 2025. They put him in a solo cell in the enhanced outpatient program wing with 24/7 cameras on him, daily mental health check-ins, and yard time limited to 90-minute windows inside a fenced-off area where nobody else could step foot. His attorney, Jose Baez, filed a motion in June 2025 going after CDCR for $500,000 in damages over negligence. The motion pulled up declassified emails from prison staff dated April 2025, where a counselor had literally warned about incoming threats from LA-based crews, but got overruled because of budget issues with the segregation units. As of February 2026, that civil suit is still in discovery, with CDCR trying to get it tossed on sovereign immunity grounds. The stabbing also pushed Tory's appeal timeline back 3 whole months. Between recovery, health quarantine protocols, and a freeze on legal visits, everything got delayed. But it also gave Tory something he didn't have before: a powerful narrative. In his December 2025 NBC interview, he called the scars a constant reminder of the system's indifference. The internet's reaction to the stabbing was split right down the middle. Some people showed genuine love and concern for Tory's well-being. Others, mostly folks who rode hard for Megan, cracked jokes or said he had it coming. And that response sparked its own wave of pushback.
Where I take issue is if you're asking for Tory to be held accountable, and for those people that meant prison, you can't then be cheering that he gets stabbed in prison.
That point cut through the noise for a lot of people on both sides of the fence. The logic was simple. Prison was the punishment. Celebrating somebody getting carved up on top of that is a whole different level of foul.
He went to prison. What else do you want him to, he got 10 years. That should be the end of it.
Tory folded the incident into his clemency pitch, and he dropped a prison-recorded joint called Scars Speak in October 2025, rapping about resilience and how the system throws you to the wolves. Over 40,000 signatures on a petition backing him up were hand-delivered to CDCR headquarters in Sacramento. By January 2026, the stabbing didn't spring him, but it changed the whole conversation about what was happening to this man on the inside. The NBC interview, the clemency push, and the conspiracies. On December 10, 2025, Tory Lanez broke a 3-year silence with the media. He sat down with NBC News for a 90-minute conversation from a visitation booth at California Men's Colony. It was his first broadcast interview since they locked him up. He came through in khakis and a gray hoodie. His voice was steady, but his eyes told a different story. The keloid scars from the May stabbing running down his forearm, like a roadmap of everything he'd been through. He said he'd never put hands on a woman. He said the public had him painted as somebody he wasn't. And then he said the one thing his supporters had been waiting years to hear, that he regretted not taking the stand at his own trial.
Lanez declined to testify during his 2022 trial.
Do you regret not taking the stand?
I think if I would have taken the stand, the verdict would have definitely been very different.
That question, why didn't Tory get up there and speak, been haunting this case since the verdict dropped. Academics, who broke down the interview on his channel, said he always felt Tory was holding it down for Kelsey by keeping his mouth shut.
I always felt Tory was kind of protecting a little bit Kelsey.
He said he believed what really went down involved a tussle over the gun, not a targeted shooting.
I felt like it always went down that they were fighting for a gun.
But Ack also got on Tory's head about a specific part of the interview, the moment they asked Tory if he had something to say to Megan. Tory said he'd rather have that conversation face to face, and that he didn't carry no hatred toward her. Academics said that was a terrible look for a man who's convicted of shooting the very person he's talking about forgiving.
Currently, you're convicted of shooting her. You answering a question about if you forgive her?
The worry was that any court reviewing this interview would peep Tory positioning himself as the one extending grace, which don't line up with somebody who says they're completely innocent.
And they're gonna say, this is bugging. What do you mean if you forgive her when we convicted you of shooting her?
Meanwhile, the clemency push had been building since May 2025, when U.S. Representative Anna Paulina Luna sent a clemency recommendation letter to Governor Gavin Newsom. The 4-page letter had co-signs from 5 other House members, including Matt Gaetz. It argued that the prosecution fumbled the bag, pointing to Kelsey's flip-flopping statements and the buried medical records, and pushed for mercy. The letter framed Tory's conviction as a symptom of how the system treats young black men in the entertainment game, and pointed to his rehabilitation work behind bars, including locking in on a high school equivalency by August 2024. Newsom's office acknowledged the letter on June 5th, 2025, and kicked it over to the Board of Parole Hearings. Megan filed a formal opposition letter on July 12th, 2025, through her attorney, Alex Spiro, standing on her testimony and talking about the emotional toll of having to relive the worst night of her life. As of February 2026, the board hasn't even called a hearing. A spokesperson said the file is active but pending, buried in a backlog of over 100 clemency applications. A Change.org petition calling for Tory's release blew past 250,000 signatures by January 2026. His supporters pulled up outside the California state capitol, but the legal reality is that governors almost never grant clemency without an appellate court flipping the conviction first. Only 12 firearm-related commutations went through in the last 10 years. Academics broke down why he thought a Newsom pardon was dead on arrival, and the reason had nothing to do with the case itself.
Gavin Newsom is not going to pardon Tory Lanez. Why?
He pointed out that Newsom had been publicly rocking Megan Thee Stallion's music in political posts aimed at the Trump administration and Nicki Minaj, pardoning the dude convicted of shooting the same artist whose joints you've been bumping on your political timeline. That's a wrap.
If he pardoned Tory, it would be a political nightmare.
Folks also brought up the idea of a presidential pardon from Trump, but that was a dead end too, because this is a state case, not federal.
Trump can't do nothing to him, can he?
This is state case.
This is state.
And then you got the conspiracy talk. Online, X, YouTube, Instagram, the blogs, a narrative been floating around for years accusing Jay-Z and Roc Nation of pulling the strings behind the entire case to protect Megan, who's been under Roc Nation management since 2019. The theories range from claims that Tory's former lawyer Sean Hawley had secret ties to Roc Nation and tanked his defense on purpose, all the way to allegations that Roc Nation greased the jury, the judge, and even set up the prison stabbing. In February 2026, a wave of posts attributed to DJ Vlad went viral, alleging that Roc Nation paid him to back Megan's narrative, bribed court officials, paid doctors to cook the injury reports, and bought off Supreme Court justices. The posts were dramatic and completely unverified, but not everybody was rocking with the tinfoil hat energy. Some people pushed back hard.
I'm pretty sure Jay-Z had nothing to do with that, my guy. Like, Jay-Z was at home when Megan got shot in the foot. Like,
Megan is under Roc Nation.
The argument was straightforward. Being signed to Roc Nation don't mean Jay-Z personally orchestrated a criminal conviction from his living room. The conspiracy theories keep circulating, but not a single piece of evidence backing any of them has held up in court. The evidence that held, the lives that kept moving, and where this whole thing goes. For all the noise about new evidence, bodyguard testimonies, and Roc Nation conspiracies, the forensic backbone of this case hasn't buckled, not even a little. And to understand why Tory's still locked up despite all the public outcry, you gotta look at what the prosecution actually put on the table at trial, and what every appellate court has co-signed since. The hammer they recovered from the SUV's floorboard on July 12, 2020, was a black Taurus PT738 TCP, serial number XJF12345. It went into the trial record as exhibit number 47. LAPD criminalist Dr. Elena Vasquez testified that a mixed DNA sample pulled from the gun slide came back as a partial match to Tory's buckall swab at a 1/10,000 random match probability. No DNA from Megan or Kelsey turned up on the strap, a detail Tory's defense ran with to argue contamination, and one his supporters been citing ever since.
Now, the inconclusive thing that he talks about, which is when there were these reports that were released that Tory Lanez DNA was not found on the gun that shot Meg Thee Stallion.
The DNA results sat in a gray zone, not enough to say definitively his DNA was on it, but not enough to rule him out either.
Now, inconclusive means that there wasn't enough evidence to say his DNA was on it.
But the prosecution wasn't riding on DNA alone. Gunshot residue swabbing from Tory's hands turned up 12 antimony lead particles on his right palm, way past the 3-particle threshold for recent discharge under ASTM protocols. Megan and Kelsey both came back clean on their GSR tests. Now, Tory's supporters been saying GSR was found on Kelsey, but the official court record says Kelsey tested negative and Tory tested positive. That GSR evidence was the prosecution's bread and butter when it came to arguing Tory was the one who let it off. Ballistics testing confirmed 4 discharge casings from the pistol matched the gun's barrel pattern. The fragments they pulled out of Megan's feet, 2 intact slugs and 2 jacketed pieces, showed the kind of deformation you get from low-velocity rounds fired from less than 5 feet away. LAPD's trajectory work, done alongside a biomechanical engineer out of USC, mapped the shots as coming from the front passenger seat, Tory's spot, with a muzzle-to-target distance of 2 to 4 feet. A 2024 request by Tory's team for next-generation DNA sequencing got shot down by Judge Hereford, who ruled the original analysis was thorough enough. An independent look by the Innocence Project's Forensics Unit in October 2025 found no methodological errors, just debates over interpretation. The chain of custody on the physical evidence stretched over 5 years with 1,200 discrete log entries across 15 different custodians. Tory's people brought in retired LAPD Sergeant Mark Furman to audit the whole thing. Furman flagged some procedural gaps, like a 14-hour stretch where the Escalade sat unattended in the tow lot, but couldn't find any actual breach. The appellate court spent 12 pages tearing apart every chain of custody argument the defense raised, so the evidence held. But life didn't stop for anybody involved. Megan Thee Stallion, 31 now, kept stacking. Her 2022 album Traumazine debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200. Tory, 33 and behind bars, kept the music coming regardless. He put out the Lost Tape series with 4 EPs between 2023 and 2025. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.